Hi, I'm Cort with the Moab Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us for today's debates, the 2023 Moab City Council elections. Today's debates are sponsored by the Moab Chamber of Commerce, and we'd like to highlight a couple of the benefits that the Chamber brings to the business community. As a chamber, our mission is to engage, empower, and educate businesses for greater success. We do so by focusing on the following areas: building your network with organizations and representatives at the local, state, and federal level, providing education to the business community, and informing businesses on key issues impacting the local economy. We hope you'll consider joining the Moab Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the debate.
All right. First, I want to welcome everyone that's here. Thank you for coming. Also want to thank all the candidates. This is not an easy thing to do. We understand that completely. So thank you for being willing to come up here and get put through all of our questions. Now we will bring up our mayor, Joette, who has a few words for you as well.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here. Whew, these are bright lights. I will say, this is a much more intimidating process than what Luke, Jason, and I went through when we ran, where we got to do it on Zoom and answer all the questions in our homes by ourselves. It wasn't as intimidating as this, so there you go, you guys. I just want to say that this is a really good time for you all to be running for the City Council. We're in pretty good shape at City Hall right now. We've got a great team. We've got a lot going on, a lot of good. We also have some challenges. And so you all are going to have to work with the staff and with the current council that's going to continue on, and myself, to tackle those challenges. And I'm sure you're all up to the task. I can say that any of you candidates are going to make great City Council members, and I look forward to working with you, and thank you so much for jumping in and helping to shape the future of our town. So thanks. All right, now I have really quick, I want to just give you some updates on voting. So you know, we're not doing ranked choice voting this year, but it is an unusual year. We do have our election, which is usually the second Tuesday, the first Tuesday after the second Monday. This year, it's on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, because we had a congressman of the 2nd District resign, and so the governor wanted us to have a special election for that Congress seat. So it'll be on the 21st of November. Your mail-out-in ballots are going to go out on October 31st, so it's going to be a lot later than usual. You'll probably receive your ballots the first week of November, so check and make sure that you're registered. If you're not registered, you can register up until November 10th. After that, you can register as a provisional ballot, and you can do that during the early voting period, which is November 7th through the 17th, and you can do that at Grant County, or you can also do it on Election Day. All your mail-in ballots have to be postmarked by November 20th, and or you can drop them off at the county clerk's office or the city recorder's office. So make sure you get your ballots in by November 20th, or drop them off in person. And the final vote, canvass vote after the election, will be held on the 28th of November at City Hall. So that's all I have. And ready to go? You guys ready to go? All right, here you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, now the fun police is here. Sorry, I gotta have all the rules. So everyone hold their phone up if it's easy to access. Okay, cool, I like it. I don't see any phones. So please, please, please put them on silent. This is being recorded. It picks up noise very easily. So we just wanna make sure that we're not getting buzzing noises or ringtones, even if it's a good song. This is a ton of effort that the candidates put in for these, and they're putting themselves out there, so please be really, really respectful and courteous, and give everyone a lot of enthusiastic applause. None of the candidates have received the questions beforehand, only topics. Please remain seated during rounds, so in between rounds, if you need to use the restroom, we'll try to be good about giving little breaks here and there, but please don't get up if you can help it while they're speaking. So same thing, no interruptions or outbursts from audience, so even if you're mad about something someone says, please be kind, and hold applause until the end of each round. So just to give you a quick synopsis of how this is going to go, so we're going to start with introductions and opening statements. One thing that has been asked to be included is they've all been asked to come up with a slogan for Moab in their introduction. So it'll be kind of fun to hear what they all have come up with. We do have a timer. They've been warned. We have a flashlight that at 15 seconds will flash it, and then they get to finish their sentence when the timer goes off, and then they will be cut off and said thank you to. So they have been warned. So I'm sorry. We will first have a general questioning round. It'll be 2-minute response times for each of those questions. And then we go into a next round where they'll all have different questions, 2 questions each. And then we go into a lightning round where it should spur some really good debate and conversation, and I'm hoping we have some fun with that. So those will be 1-minute response times, so they got to think quick. And then they get to have a conclusion with also a 1-minute response time. Lonnie and I are reserving the right to ask follow-up questions throughout this process, so just be on your toes because we're going to try to think of some tough ones. So thank you guys so much for being out here and supporting our candidates, and we're so excited to see what you guys have to say.
One last thing. The order that we're in, we drew numbers earlier, so it is completely at random. There's no strategy to the order they're in, so that should be noted as well. Ready? Okay, starting with Colin.
Thank you. First, thanks to the Chamber, thanks to my fellow candidates, and especially thanks to all of you who took time out of your busy schedules to come here tonight. It's really important to see so many faces here because that's showing all of us that you are committed, you want to be involved in seeing this thing through, seeing this little town realize its fullest potential and really become the best version of itself. With all that, my name is Colin Topper. I moved to Moab about 25 years ago, and I would characterize those 25 years as being full of open doors and opportunities. I've started and operated 3 successful businesses. I have a beautiful family, two kids, a home. I'm currently the chair of Grand County Trail Mix, and I want to be sure, and the big reason I'm up here tonight is that those same doors and many of those same opportunities are open to other people in this community and people still yet to come to this community. I'm getting the signal. So my slogan that I came up with, and this is both a slogan out to the greater world, but also a call to action to this community, is a community that cares in a landscape that inspires. Thank you.
Just really quick, Colin, you could hear the buzzer, right?
I could.
Okay, we're just checking. Yeah. We're just checking if that's the one thing we didn't test. No, you're good. That was perfect. Okay, Patrick.
My name is Patrick Robbins, and good evening and welcome to this debate. I want to thank everybody up on the stage. I want to thank the Chamber for the opportunity to be able to talk to this body of wonderful people. I was raised in Moab, Utah. I graduated from high school in 1979. I believe in this community. I believe in our beautiful country that we have here. And I think that I can, with my years of experience in administration in small, medium, and large government, being the United States government, I believe that I bring some skill sets to the table that will be helpful for our challenges that we're meeting. My slogan is quite simple. I've got 2 of them. Is do more with less and locals first. I think that we are in a country today that it's got some major challenges going on, and I think that we need to have people in government that are responsive to the people's needs and do more with less and locals first. I'm short.
Thank you. Caitlin.
My name is Caitlin Myers, and I'm running for Moab City Council. This is my slogan for Moab, and this is my mission for running, is to make Moab a place to call home. The definition of home starts first and foremost with housing. I'm a professional housing advocate in this community, and I've worked for years to provide homes to dozens of working families in our community, working on projects like Arroyo Crossing. If elected, I will continue to lead on solutions to one of our community's greatest challenges. But a place to call home is so much more than just a house. It is the ability to grow roots and to start a family in this community. It includes a thriving economy and a business community that feels supported and stable through the highs and the lows. It is services that support residents from childbirth to senior care and every life stage in between. It is access to arts and parks and trails, and it includes infrastructure and resources that will serve current and future residents. I'm a leader in housing, I'm a leader in community development, and I'm a leader for Moab today and tomorrow, and I look forward to building a place to call home.
All right, Brad.
I'm Brad Woodford. I want to thank the Chamber for putting this on. I'm a father of 2 amazing, bright young kids, and my lovely wife grew up here in Moab. I was a business owner for 10 years. One was a community-minded business collecting and sorting recycling for residents, and another one was a campground that catered to visitors. On August 20th of last year, that campground got flooded out, and in the aftermath of that, the community came out and helped me, and now I want to help the community. I want to prepare us for more extreme weather events in the future, like the August 20th flood. I'm also focused on making sure our businesses in Moab can not only survive but thrive, and that our kids and families are supported and taken care of. I will work to make housing attainable for people who are trying to make Moab their home, and ensure we monitor, conserve, and protect our water resources. The city's policies should reflect the needs of the community, and I will strive to make sure that they line up. My slogan for Moab is all forward, and it's a rafting term, and being from a small, isolated community is not unlike being in a raft, and if I was to be elected as a counselor, I would be your raft guy saying all forward and getting people together. Thank you.
All right, Tawny.
Thank you. Thank you for all being here this evening, and thank you to the Chamber for putting this on. And I would be remiss if I did not thank our law enforcement, our fire department, our EMS, our staff at Canyon Lensfield, and any other first responder. They have had a really, really rough 24 hours, so they all deserve our thanks. My slogan for Moab is Moab, a small city with big city acumen and acclaim, striving to maintain a small town feel. When Doug McMurdo asked me why I was running, the first things that came to my mind were, I love the work we do. I love this city, I love this community, and I still want to serve. After 8 years, I still want to serve. And I promise to do my best to serve and represent every one of you.
All right, we will be moving into our first round of questions. We're going to start with Colin, and we'll work our way down, and we'll shift everyone. So, yeah, and this question will be asked to all of the participants, just so you know. What role does the business community play in Moab, and what role does the government play in business?
Great question. So in Moab, especially in this town, the only town in Utah that doesn't have a property tax, where we rely solely on a sales tax to fund this town, our economic engine is Main Street Moab. And so that's the role. And so it's also the responsibility of that business community to be engaged in government. The flip side of that is that as the government, as our city government, it's our role and our responsibility to foster and promote the safest, most predictable trajectory for our city through policy, so that all of these businesses know and can feel certain that they have stable footing to stand on when they encounter these turbulent times, so that they can adapt and grow and innovate and change and support this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Great subject. I think that the role between business and government in Moab is a unique role. I grew up in this town when there was Knowles Hardware and Sprouse Wrights and Jack Walker with Walker Drug. There was an interaction between business and government that worked. I think we listened to people more often back then and we got more feedback. Jack Walker could be a little bit loud with his feedback at times, but thank God he did. I think the government, the city government, specifically speaking, because that's the office I'm running for, it's important for us to be responsive to the business needs. I think that the government is here to support business and support the citizens that those businesses serve. And anything that we can do to support that relationship and have an ongoing relationship, we can solve all problems that come up between the two.
Thank you. And Caitlin, if you need me to repeat the question, or if any of you need a question repeated, just feel free to ask.
Sure, we've gone through 2, so we might as well repeat it once.
Okay. What role does the business community play in Moab, and what role does the government play in business?
Great, thanks. So the business community to Moab, the businesses are the driving force and the lifeblood of this town. We wouldn't be here today without it. None of us on this stage, we all play a role in our business community and particularly in our tourism community. I, for one, wouldn't be here without tourism, and I think that that's true of many of us in this room, particularly our business owners. And that is the driving force of our community. I believe that the city's role is to support those businesses and to make sure that they can run their businesses as they need to. I believe that businesses should be able to do what they want and what they need to do to take care of their clients and to take care of the visitors and the residents of this town. And so what I think that looks like is for the government to figure out ways within our land use code and within our business license applications and all of this to be able to streamline our processes to support our business community and make it easier for them to do business and work with people in this town. I also think that the government plays a role and the city plays a role in partnering with our businesses. I've worked in economic development for a local business. I've never worked in, I'm currently working in the nonprofit world, but I've never been a private for-profit business owner. Most of my career and most of what I love to do is to provide support from the public side to our business community. It's something I'm really looking forward to doing in this role. And I think that looks like providing housing support and childcare support and programs for our students and recreational opportunities. I believe that everyone in the business community deserves a voice in the direction of our community, and I believe that it is the city's job to give them that opportunity to share their expertise as the city and as elected officials are charting a path forward for everyone in this town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead and repeat that again, too, just to...
Repeat it?
Yeah.
Yep. What role does the business community play in Moab, and what role does the government play in business?
Businesses in Moab are the economic heart of this area, and they play a huge role in making sure that all of us can live here and we have something to do to bring value to this area and bring value to our own homes and lives here. What the city needs to do is be responsive to those business needs and give clear, streamlined processes for businesses whenever they're changing or growing or doing something to make sure that the city is not going to be a stumbling block in that process. As I know, I have some friends that are in the business right now that they're not getting that clear, streamlined advice from the city and are struggling with that. So I think we need, as a city, to have a little more clear guidance on what is expected of them, whether it's a remodel or changing different things about their businesses. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Tawny.
No, I don't need it repeated.
I can do it.
I'm sure you can. I think business and government are very symbiotic. Obviously, businesses in our community are the economic driver. They, like Brad said, they provide jobs, they provide income, they provide an ability for people to live here and call this town home. And the city does support those businesses, and I for one fully acknowledge that we do need to streamline some of our processes. They are clunky, and a little outdated, but it does take time to do those things. And part of the reason is that we do strive for transparency. We don't want it done, you know, behind closed doors. It needs to be out in the open. And the business community and the community in general need to be involved in that. I think we have to rely on each other and support one another, whether it's the city supporting the businesses or businesses supporting the city. And please communicate to your city leaders what you need in clear terms. I've heard several times that the city should do more to support the businesses, but I don't get clear direction on what that would be. So as a sitting city council member, I would like to have clearer direction on what you need.
Thank you. Sorry, we're making notes. Okay, so now we're going to go back the opposite way. So sorry, you get a second turn. So Tani, what are the biggest challenges that our businesses face within the city limits?
Wow, I only have how long? The biggest challenges that our businesses face, obviously, are housing and staffing. Providing housing for employees is just impossible for some of our smaller mom and pop businesses. A lot of them have given it the college try, and I know that there are many businesses that really, really do work to house their employees and to pay them a decent wage. It's no secret it's expensive to live here. Even if you have stable housing and a place that you've lived in for several years or decades, it's still expensive just to keep up with all of the rising costs. But from what I have observed and the businesses that I've seen and the business owners I have talked to, they all struggle with the same thing, and they're all trying to figure out a different way to manage those struggles. Housing has been a struggle in Moab since the uranium boom. When my in-laws moved here, there were plenty of people living in campers and in trailers and in tents. So it isn't a new problem for us. We just have to face it with different tools than they did 60 years ago. And the other problem that we face is there's not as much land in the city limits to build on, so we can't always build our way out of housing crises.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat the question, Brad?
No, thanks. I agree with Tani. That's what I hear all the time, is housing is by far the biggest challenge, to have that for employee housing or bringing in new staff for other, getting in new talent here. And I think I also experienced that. I used to hire between 4 and 5 people a year at Green Solutions doing curbside recycling, and it was an absolute huge challenge. And I would have people that just wouldn't show up. They'd be living in cars. They'd show up and work for a few days, but they couldn't find housing and would leave. And so I think we need to start throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. I know on the Times Independent it said I had the idea of inventorying public land, and what I said was any city-owned land, and I think we could also work with the county to see if there's any county-owned parcels as well, to either deed restrict them or get them in the hands of HAZU or people who do affordable, attainable housing. And we need to proactively go after those developers or approach those developers and say, hey, is this something that you could build on? And I know that some of those parcels of land may not be good for it, so we should have a very strategic, strong look at what land is available to us and really push for that to try and and get that built. And while we're doing that, we should also go out and talk to other communities, because we are certainly not special in this. This is all over the country. I had a friend who was just over in North Carolina on a business trip, and he said that they are struggling with the exact same things that we are struggling with here. And there's plenty of other resort communities that the laws of supply and demand sometimes don't necessarily work, like Durango or Telluride, where our average median wage is just way, way too low to afford the average house price here. And so we have to figure out how to close that gap and get people here and house them.
Thank you. Caitlin, would you like to repeat the question?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
I'm going to agree. I think if I had to take a guess, I think we're all going to say housing for this question. I think that's a very obvious answer. And I think that I am the perfect person to talk about this in many ways, because this is what I do every day, 40 hours a week, is to provide housing to people in our community that are living and working here. I think that housing is clearly the biggest challenge, because in order to run a business, you need reliable people to work at that business. In order to have those people and to be able to retain those people, they need to have a stable place to call home. Shelter is one of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It is a base need, and so I think that that's an obvious answer for this question. And I just want to address, I think there have been some comments about we can't build our way out of this, and I think that that is true in some ways, but I think that we are finding really important solutions at the city and the county and at the Community Land Trust to be able to do that. Just sharing a couple of examples of the Royal Crossing. I hear these stories all the time about people working in businesses or business owners struggling to find employees. I've held workshops on this. It is the most powerful thing to see someone be able to go from working 2 jobs, living out of a trailer with 7 kids living in that trailer, to being able to move into a stable house and to be able to settle and grow roots here. That is business retention. That is the path forward towards business development. And that is why it is one of our biggest challenges. I have worked on a project for the last 6 years to be able to provide housing for families like this. And I have seen how successful it can be. And so I'm excited to bring the skills and the knowledge that I've learned through my work on housing to be able to provide more stability and to allow more people in this community to be able to grow and thrive here. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Patrick?
Thank you, Caitlin. I've heard some really good things here this evening, and I've written down a couple of things some of my people up here on the stage with me have stated. And, I think that business and housing is one of our largest challenges that we face today. And, we're in a landlocked situation. Back in 1979, I can remember we were landlocked then, where there were several people in town that held property that wanted the price that they wanted for their property. I think property has always been a problem for us. We have done some removal of some of the smaller starter homes in Moab, like trailer parks. Walnut Hill's another one. There's been some displaced people from it as well. If we don't have the starter homes for these people, and I thank Caitlin for her stuff out there at the Arroyo subdivision. I mean, these folks, it's not the ideal situation. These folks don't own the land, but they own the house that they built on top of that land. And I thank Caitlin for all of her efforts. I think that we haven't struck on the one thing that will fix this problem. It seems like with all of the problems we have with energy and finance and politics in this world, that we've run out of the simple solutions, so now we're down to the hard solutions. When you replace fossil fuels, you got to replace it with wind energy, solar energy, a lot of other things. I think that when we enact laws that remove the rights of businesses to be able to operate, and then the state comes back around and makes legislation to correct that stuff. My thoughts are the noise from the ATVs. We had a noise ordinance. It seemed like to me like a good idea to control the noise, and it just didn't work. I think we need to stop throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready?
Go ahead.
Businesses in our community are being slammed from multiple directions at this point. We've got some external pressures. We've got inflation. We've got a struggling national economy. We've got a war overseas. All of this affects a little community out here in the desert that relies so heavily on tourists from around the world to come here and enjoy our backyard. Internally, so the unfortunate piece of those is those happen to be out of our control. What is in our control are some other challenges facing our business community. The first, I just lump under an increasingly unlivable community. Housing is a huge part of that, but it's also the crowding, the noise, the lack of mobility and safety, and then the crumbling infrastructure. If you walk downtown Moab, the sidewalks are coming up. Can you imagine trying to move a wheelchair down Main Street? The sidewalks are crumbling. The trees are dying. There are weeds everywhere. We have an opportunity to take much better care of our, what I reference as our golden goose. What keeps giving and giving. We've just been neglecting, and eventually it's not going to give anymore. And so businesses really are struggling right now. And we're going to talk about some great ways that the city can do much better for our business community.
Thank you. That was the end of round one. If anyone needs a quick bathroom break, we'll give you 2 minutes, and then we're going to start round two.
All right. Now we are moving on to 10 questions that will be a little bit more in depth. Patrick, we're going to start with you this time. The main business corridor for Moab is Main Street, which is also a state highway. Notably, the business corridor extends out from 100 West to 400 East. What challenges do businesses in our corridor face? What are your solutions to those challenges?
That's an awesome question. There's a lot of problems that we have on Main Street. Not all of them, some of them are seasonal. One of the things I've looked into that my people that have wanted me to run for city council, one of the major complaints I hear from folks in town is trying to make a left turn on Main Street anywhere from car show to a Jeep Safari to car show. Some of those solutions are getting the right survey done by the state, since that is a state highway. They control how traffic lights are installed and when they're installed, and we need to have some studies done to have the left turn signal study done during the season, not during the winter months when they're not going to find that there's enough traffic to make a turn. Colin mentioned some stuff, and we had a citizen talk at a city council meeting a couple weeks ago about curbs and trash cans and the unsightliness of Main Street. Those are some problems we need to definitely address and get with the state and see what we can do to I don't know what the state easement is on sidewalks and stuff like that, but I think the state might be responsible for some of that. We need to support the businesses in their needs being on that state highway. I didn't really understand the dispersed parking, the great big parking lot that I have everybody. I work at City Market. People come in there to get their fuel, and they gripe about the things that make them upset that day. And I've been an ear to hear. And so those are some problems that we're going to have to address. I know that our current city council and our mayor have worked really hard on building the parking lot and getting the dispersed parking to use those funds to help the city, and we need to continue those routes.
Colin, since your name was mentioned, you have 1 minute to rebuttal.
Is this a rebuttal, or can you rephrase the question?
Or distinguish.
Definitely some challenges with our existing downtown area and the highway that runs through town, but also a lot of opportunity there. And there's been a lot of already great ideas, and I think everything should be on the table, because what would really benefit this community through its business community is to have a much more walkable, safe downtown area, places where people can congregate, truly something that we can all be really, really proud of, because this is our economic engine. And so moving forward, I am willing to entertain any idea that anybody has, and in this conversation to try to retake our main street. Yeah.
One follow-up for Colin. For Patrick. Sorry. We do both.
Yeah. Where's the part where I can call Jane? Never mind.
You mentioned some of the struggles that we're going to have with it being part of UDOT. What is something that you could do and implement right away to correct some of these problems?
That's a real interesting question. When I worked for Western Express as the West Coast Director of Safety, I've got background in the federal government. And one of the problems we were having with Western Express is some problems with the way that California was conducting their CSA inspections of trucks, and they weren't following the law. I think it's real important to focus on what the state's responsibility is and how that affects you as a business. Now, turning that around, being a government entity, the state is responsible for a lot of the rules and stuff that are on that highway. So I think that forging a better relationship with the state and finding exactly what it is the parameters are to be able to make the changes that will help the businesses.
Thank you. Okay, Caitlin, every year, every candidate is pro-housing. What concrete changes are you going to bring to the council to move the needle on housing?
Great question. I'm so excited to get it. My housing solutions are 4 S's. One is supply. We need to make sure that we continue to build housing, because if we stop building housing, it's going to make our problem worse. Second one is stability. We need to make sure that we are deed restricting housing for locals, and we are implementing programs and policies to make sure that our landlords are treating their renters correctly and that everyone feels supported in their homes. The third is subsidy. I think that there are people in this community that do need subsidy in order to be able to live in their homes, and I think the city needs to figure out how to be involved in that conversation and how to financially support are people that are in real need of very subsidized housing. The fourth is sustainability. I think that we need to, with every new development that is coming on, we need to make sure that every building project is financially and resource and physically sustainable, to make sure that that unit is going to be stable for those people that are living in that unit, but also for future generations, making sure that we're conserving our resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. And just to reiterate, these questions were random, so just... all right, so Brad, we've chosen you to rebuttal or distinguish. Either way.
I agree a lot with what Caitlin said. Those are all excellent ideas, and I do think we are going to have to do something in that. I think the only other distinguishing thing I would say is...
Can you bring it closer to your mouth?
If we could perhaps, have even an affordable or attainable housing summit that we invite a lot of the similar communities that have the same problems as us, that brings developers, realtors, officials, builders all together and see what is working and what's not working. And if we could do something like that that way we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And if we can find those things that are working in similar communities and implement them in our own unique place, I think that would help out.
Thank you. All right, quick follow-up question. We would like you to elaborate on what it means to treat renters fairly.
Happy to elaborate. I think that means a couple of things. I think a lot of us are feeling the price increases, and so I think that we need to figure out ways to, tying in that subsidy, figure out ways to better support both people that are trying to rent out their homes. They're purchasing a home that has a $3,500 mortgage because of interest rates. We need to figure out ways for the city to be able to partner with those people and to be able to, not necessarily control the rent, but to be able to establish things like a good landlord program that will create a template lease agreement between a landlord and a tenant to make sure that it's written in that lease that that tenant can only expect a 3 to 5% bump in their housing price. We also need to make sure that our tenants are living in safe, sound, stable housing that is clean and is going to be healthy for them, because a lot of people are living in really poor housing right now, and landlords should be a part of that solution.
Thank you. All right, Brad, moving on to your question. When it comes to business growth, which statement best aligns with your stance? Growth, controlled growth, no growth, or reduction? Please explain your answer, including strategies you would implement accordingly.
I think on those 4 choices, I would certainly say controlled growth. I think we need to definitely try to direct what kinds of growth. We don't want it to just be haywire and do whatever you want, but at the same time, we need to have smart growth, which I can't remember the complete acronym, but it's strategic, methodical, realistic growth that then we could maybe partner with and have a closer relationship with Grand County's economic development. As I said before, I think the city is the economic heart of this whole area. And if we could have a little more say or a better working relationship with economic development here and have a little more direction, or at least a working relationship, I think we could direct that growth and keep it in a good controlled manner where we're not, hopefully it doesn't go the other way, but also too much growth would also could potentially damage the quality of life for our residents, which we also don't want to see.
Patrick, would you like a chance to do a rebuttal or a differentiation?
No, I like a lot of what you've said. I think that I agree with him with controlled growth, but I think there's something that we're forgetting here. I said it earlier in my statement earlier, we're landlocked. We've got to look at innovative solutions that haven't been looked at. Maybe partnerships with the federal government in loosening up some of the land up on top of the sand flats and stuff. I mean, you can only take a pie and cut it into so many slices. The pie is still a 16-inch pie unless you increase the pie size. I mean, we're overgrown now to the point where we don't have any more land reasonably able to be able to access it to make affordable housing. There have been great attempts by this city over the last several years to do exactly that. And I would like to see us look at some other avenues to be able to do that controlled growth. We've got to have more land, and there are other options that have not been tapped.
Thank you. No follow-up. Okay, Tawny, what are your solutions to the limited availability of commercial space?
I'm not sure I have solutions, but I think that there is commercial space within the city limits that's not being utilized to its fullest or to its best extent. There are partnerships that we can explore, or do an inventory of our current commercial space, and not be afraid to think outside the box. I'm not always the most innovative, and so I can't look at a space and envision something completely different. But there certainly are people in this city that can do that and have done that. I think it isn't called the Moab Free Clinic anymore, but that's what it used to be called. They have done an incredible job of reimagining a commercial space. And it has been such a needed resource in our community for a long time. I know that the property that Wabi Sabi sits on right now is being reimagined, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that becomes. I think that we need to give young people a chance and let them come up with creative solutions. None of us have all of the answers or all of the solutions, but I think it's incumbent on all of us to listen to each other and communicate clearly what we can envision.
Thank you. Caitlin, rebuttal or distinguishing?
I'd love to respond. I think that there's a lot that we can do to explore the availability and how to better support commercial development spaces. Moab City is going to do a revamp of their municipal code next year. I think this speaks to the questions about Main Street downtown area. This speaks to limited availability of commercial spaces. I think we need to look at our municipal code and improve our parking code. We need to look at ways to better support mixed use so that as the older buildings in our downtown area and in some of our older commercial areas rebuild, that we can do a more innovative approach to mixed use, providing housing and spaces for local businesses to grow. I think that we need to focus on infill development and making our code easier for businesses to work within so that they can, when they are looking at, as Patrick said, we do have a limited availability of land. And so I think that we need to look at the tools that we do have within our municipal code to write it so that it is better and will better service renovating and rebuilding our commercial areas.
Thank you. Tani, quick follow-up question. What is your stance on multi-use rezoning?
I think multi-use rezoning is the way that we have to reimagine pieces of property or buildings in order for us to get the most bang for our buck. Not everybody wants to live in a single-family detached home, and I think some mixed use with commercial on a bottom floor and housing on the upper 2 floors or the upper floor is a really good solution. And we have several little places like that already tucked away in Moab, and they serve a really good purpose for people that don't necessarily want to purchase a home or live in a single family dwelling.
Thank you.
All right, Colin. A vital part of the future of Moab's success is being able to attract long-term generational residents with a vested interest in our community. Outside of housing, what are your solutions to attracting young professionals, families, and those with a long-term interest in Moab, as well as retaining those that we have?
It all just comes down to livability in Moab, quality of life. We have the attraction. We have these amazing public lands that surround Moab that brought so many of us here. And moving forward, the way we continue to attract people and more importantly keep them here is by just investing in a community that is as livable and with the highest quality of life as possible. And so what I'm talking about is a community with great pedestrian safety and infrastructure. I'm talking about a community that, there are opportunities for adventure, for exploring, that a community that takes care, that shows that it can maintain its infrastructure. We have good roads, good sidewalks where appropriate, pathways, everything that just makes a city livable is the single best way to improve Moab and therefore make it a place that people will want to stay and create a life here.
Tani, would you like to do a rebuttal or a distinguishing? Let's use that word.
A distinguishing. I agree with what Colin says. I don't think that it's attracting people to live here that's a problem, because people come here and they fall in love and they want to stay. Part of the trouble is that we don't have an interim place for them to land for a short period of time. We don't have apartments that they can rent for 6 or 8 months and or for longer. So they get frustrated and leave. And I wish that we could create a place for those young people or for those entrepreneurs to come and land, and find a place to call home.
Colin, you'd mentioned trying to build a safer town and community. What are your, expand on that for me?
What's nearest and dearest to me is pedestrian safety. I would like, and what my vision for this town is, a community where we can get around on bike and foot safely and efficiently, and I don't think that's currently the state and theirs. Though we do have a good foundation to build on, I think we have a lot of work to do. Yep. And so to me, this whole thing just comes back to one simple theme. It's investing in community. You know, if we invest in a community that people want to live at and can live in, then everything else will fall in place after that. Businesses will flourish, the economy will flourish, but it all begins with creating a community and investing in that community.
Thank you. All right, Patrick, we have seen moratoriums on both overnight lodging and OHV businesses. How do you feel the moratoriums have impacted our businesses, and do you feel they are an effective way to control business?
Moratorium, let me clarify that question. Moratorium on businesses? Is that what the question?
On overnight lodging and OHV businesses.
Okay. Overnight lodging and OHV businesses. I don't know, folks. Can we fit another hotel and another side-by-side company in town? I think all of these things are relative. When it comes right back to, you know, I've listened to my distinguished cohorts up here, you know, it all comes back to being landlocked. Once again, you know, we've got enough hotels, we got enough side-by-sides and stuff now. I mean, I don't want to stymie any business. I don't want to take anybody's rights away. I want to be able to accentuate business, but we have a serious housing problem in this town, you know, and I think that we need to address the ability to have the workers that will supply the cleaning and the changing of the beds and doing the laundry in the hotels and the waiting on the people. I think it all comes back to housing. If we are able to take care of our housing needs, then we can continue to grow those types of businesses and stuff and allow more hotels and stuff. I mean, I like the fact that what the city's doing now in sustainability. On the outset, on the first side of it, I didn't like any of it because it sounded like it was taking too many of my rights away and my fellow rights of my citizens. But I think if we can solve some of the housing problems, we can solve all of those problems.
Thank you. Brad, would you like the opportunity to rebuttal or distinguish?
Sure. I think on a moratorium of overnight rentals or OHV businesses, I actually think it is a good thing, because when they put that in, I was seeing there was however many overnight units were coming in. And I think what's happening, especially now that all businesses are a little bit down this year, is we need to slow down and figure out what is the market that we can sustain, where each one of those businesses can be successful. And especially as larger hotel chains are coming in, the last thing we want to do is have large corporate hotel chains that might have a nicer, bigger restaurant, or not restaurant, but bigger presence online that get those bookings, and then the small mom and pop hotel that has been here forever all of a sudden does not get those bookings. So I think we want to protect our smaller businesses like that. And on OHVs, I think it's the same thing, is exactly how many can our market sustain profitably before it just weakens and spreads out that market too thin.
Caitlin, what are the most realistic and promising areas of opportunity you see to expand our economy?
I think that we need to figure out ways to diversify and build upon what we're already doing with tourism. I think that there are a lot of opportunities for us to start more local businesses. For example, if you think about planning a wedding, we have a lot of destination weddings here in Moab, but we don't have very many dog groomers. That is a local year-round job that would serve both locals and tourists. We don't have a dry cleaner. I think that that is a way that we can support business, but also create opportunities for new businesses that support locals and business owners. I think that we definitely need to figure out ways in which remote working fits within Moab. I think that that is a reality that we saw. And actually last week I was at the American Planning Association conference talking about Zoom towns, this emergence of remote workers in resort towns. I think that that is an opportunity for us to figure out how to, instead of having remote workers come to us and decide to stay and take over our housing market, we need to figure out ways to partner with and plan for people with alternative types of jobs that either are or are not complementary to tourism, but are going to contribute to our local economy and create year-round jobs, higher paying jobs. I think that there are a lot of opportunities to also partner with other resort communities and figure out ways to do a little bit more workforce sharing and do a little bit more professional development. So that those people that are coming to Moab year-round, going to Park City year-round, can have a full-time job in both places and have that kind of continuous flow and that expectation and that stability. And finally, I think that we need to continue to invest in our trades. One of the biggest reasons why we're having a housing challenge is because we don't have the labor, and especially we don't have the skilled labor to be able to build those houses. And so we really need to invest in the trades, and that starts from high school.
Thank you. Colin, rebuttal or distinguishing?
20 years ago, when I started Green Solutions, Moab's first curbside recycling service, I was able to do so because I had a house, I had a community surrounding me, I had stability, and that allowed me to take the chances, to take the risks involved in starting up a business. And so one of the single best things that Moab can do, and economic diversification is a challenging effort. And so, but one of the best things that Moab can do is just create a community where people can live and want to live. And when they have that security of life in Moab, that's when business flourishes. And that's from my own experience.
Caitlin, as a follow-up, how do you plan on accomplishing year-round jobs and moving out into the shoulder seasons with more opportunities?
Great question. I am not an entrepreneur. I'll be the first to say that. But to Colin's point, I think that we do need to find ways to provide stability. I think that, we have for years and years had a CTE program. I think that we need to figure out ways to get our high school students excited and to be able to partner better with USU to teach people how to, instead of having our kids think about, okay, I'm going to go to college and then I'm going to leave and I'm going to get a job in Salt Lake City. We need to have more programs that are encouraging our students to start thinking about, that they could be a dog groomer or that they could, be a plumber. I think that our kids are not being involved in these conversations. I'm hearing this, especially from a housing perspective, and so I think that that's a great opportunity, is to start with our youth in our community and really give them an opportunity, whether they want to go to college or not, to be able to give them better entrepreneurial classes, to be able to encourage them to figure that out.
Thank you. Okay. Brad? For years, we have heard the challenges Moab City is facing with infrastructure being outdated and insufficient. What would your areas of focus be, and what actions would you take to improve the infrastructure?
I think on infrastructure, one of my main things is extreme weather preparedness. We saw what happened to our infrastructure after the August 20th flood. Where it almost took down some of our bridges and things like that. So I definitely think having a flood warning system in place is one of those things that hopefully then we can have enough warning to where we might be able to do something to save some of that infrastructure in the next extreme event comes around. Also, I think we need to invest where I know I've been hearing that we need to be paving at least 1 mile to 1.5 miles of road. I don't know where that money is coming from to do that, but I think we need to do a deep dive into the budget and get that on the books that we are going to be replacing this full entire street this year, and then the next street the next year, and have a whole strategic plan of how we're going to do that and where that money's coming from.
Thank you. Tani, would you like to rebut or distinguish?
Sure. Some of that money comes from C road funds, and that money comes from the gas tax, but it can only be used on C road funds. However, it is not anywhere close to enough to even pave 1 mile of road. Generally, in the industry, to pave 1 mile of road, it's $1 million a mile. A lot of our roads in Moab don't just need pavement or resurfacing. We're talking about rebuilding 60 and 80-year-old water lines and sewer lines that are underneath the road. That's what's going to happen with the Cane Creek, sorry about that, project. And that's why that project is so expensive. And I think the CIB money that we secured was partial grant, partial loan. I think that was a really big deal for this town.
Thank you, Tani. Brad, follow-up question with what Tani just told us about where the funds come from and that it's not enough. What would your ideas be to be able to generate some revenue to help with some of that infrastructure?
I think to generate more of that revenue, I know people have talked about a potential property tax. As of right now, I'm not absolutely for that. I think I'd want to look and see more closely what that is, but I would like to look at, I've had friends talk about an empty home tax or some other way to generate revenue that would also have those second homeowners pay into our community before I'd want to put that financial burden on our residents and exhaust all options in that way. Or also just shifting funds around to see what are the priorities and what could we cut at the city and what could we put towards that infrastructure, because that is certainly something that I hear about all the time is the roads, the roads, the roads. And what I tell them as well is just what Tani said of everything I've heard is if you're going to repave a road, you're also going to need to replace everything underneath. And it's expensive and hard, but we need to look at every which way we can figure out how to do that.
Thank you. Tani, in your opinion, what role do special events play in our economy? And would you make any changes to how special events are being handled currently?
I think special events are a really big driver in our community. There are a lot of our events that people come back to year after year after year, bring their kids and their grandkids. There are obviously some events that are more impactful to our community than others. And I think we abdicate our responsibility if we don't look at how those events morph and change, and are they still serving our community well? Is there something that we can do to mitigate issues that they may be causing, or could we move them to another venue where they might be better suited? Doing the same thing over and over, just because that's always the way we've done it, isn't really good practice. We need to look at our events and make sure that our visitors are having a good experience when they come to those events, that they aren't impacting our year-round residents so horribly that they have a miserable quality of life. And all events aren't the same. We just have to, in part, we have to trust our staff that bring those events to us, that they're bringing us events that are beneficial, and we have to we have to trust the vendors that they're going to do what they say, and if they don't, we need to hold them accountable.
Patrick, rebuttal or distinguishing?
I think I'm going to distinguish with Tani. I think she's nailed it right on the head there. I think that Jeep Safari is something that I can remember when I moved to this town with my dad in 1974. It was a real small thing, and they started out on Main Street and down both sides, and everybody drove out at the same time and headed out to the trails. I think it has changed a little bit, not just the way we've done it always, but I think Moab's pretty good at adapting to things like that, and I think it's the leadership that we have in the city now and in the past. I'm pretty much fully in supportive of what Tani said.
Tani, as a follow-up, what economic impact do you think it has on Moab and our reputation when we cancel an event?
It's not good. I think there have been some events that were canceled in the past, and especially during the pandemic, that it was wise to do it. It wasn't wise to hold them. But I think if we try to demonize any one user group or appear to favor certain users over others, it just doesn't do anything good for our reputation. It makes us look like we're cherry picking, or we're not giving everybody the chance. I think everybody that has an event has the opportunity to bring them to us, whether they're city or county events, and have us look at them fairly.
Thank you. All right, this is the last question in this round, and then we'll give you guys another quick break. So Colin, if the city revenue circumstances stay as is with higher costs and slowing revenue, what actions would you take to make sure Moab is fiscally responsible?
Well, at the city level, the city's got to be run as a business, and I think I come in with a lot of business experience, and when you're running your own business, you are it's a different kind of attentiveness to your budget and balancing your budget than I imagine at the government level. But I want to bring that care and attention and just thoughtfulness to our city budget. And it's just a matter of tightening up belts and making sure that we're spending responsibly, but still serving our citizenry.
Thank you. Caitlin, rebuttal or distinguished?
Sure, I'm gonna agree with Colin. I think that the city is a business, and the first thing you do is you do tighten your belt. And I totally agree. I think that when it comes to deciding what gets cut, I think that needs to come from staff, that needs to come from the community. The city is requested of all kinds of things all the time. Everyone has a different priority, and so I think, Patrick says this a lot, we do need to go back to our needs, but even within asking what our needs are, I think that really does need to be part of the community conversation. I remember a couple of years ago, they used to do a tool where you could online kind of set the city's budget. I thought that was amazing. I learned so much about how the city prioritizes, how much money they have coming in as revenue, and how much they have to spend on expenditures, wants versus needs. I think that would be an amazing tool in general, but particularly in light of potential dips in revenue as we're moving forward.
Thank you. All right, quick follow-up question. Colin, you talked about areas that we could tighten our belts. What would be your first priority of an area we can tighten our belts?
Great question. Challenging question. Well, that would certainly take a deep dive into the budget, but let me think about that question there. I certainly I value I don't. Excuse me. Let me start over. I do value a good pay for a job well done, and so I wouldn't want to look at the staffing as a place for tightening up your belts. But there is always there's waste in contracts and everything else that sometimes just doesn't get the attentiveness, when you're running a big city government that it should, and just that attentiveness alone can often be a great way to tighten up the belt.
Great, thank you. All right, that is the end of round 2. All right, we're getting ready for the hot seat lightning round, so we're going to do a 5-minute break, but it's going to be a legit 5 minutes, and then we're going to get ready to go. Okay, we're going to get started if y'all want to have a seat. So just to reiterate what the lightning round is about, we're going to ask a question, and it's going to be pretty much a yes, no, or neutral question. We're going to let you raise your hands. Okay, so we'll say if you agree, if you don't agree, and then if you're neutral. And then we'll ask some follow-up questions. It's not going to be necessarily follow-up questions to everyone. We might just have some things we want to touch on based on how you answer yes or no. So it should be quick and everything. Yeah, and then we'll get everyone home to bed.
Again, raise your hand if you agree.
We'll ask for you to raise your hands to agree, to disagree, and then for neutral.
Okay. Assuming the following is correct, we have seen inflation rise. 9.5%. We continue to see turbulent tourism rates and increasing costs to the city. Assuming those are true, for one of the revenue streams as a candidate, do you support the implementation of a city property tax? All of you that agree with that, raise your hand.
There's a neutral option.
Yep. All of you that disagree with city property tax, raise your hand. Okay. And neutral. Okay, so who did yes? Tawny, you said you are for property tax. Why?
We have been told over and over by the people upstate. We have been told when we go for grants. We have been told when we ask for loans. You're not asking your own people for money. Why are you coming to us before you ask your own citizens? I don't support a huge property tax increase. I think it should be very small, and I think it should be very transparent about what it is for and what it will go for. But I've seen the budget for 8 years, and I know where we're getting money from and where there just isn't any more to tap. So I think it has to be very, very small and very, very well thought out.
Patrick, you were against it. Why?
I'm against a property tax because our citizens right now are overburdened already. The people that have come to me are some of the people that are on the fringes. I work at City Market, and people are fueling up their vehicles on their payday, and they're hitting their grocery store, and they're complaining about prices. I see areas that the city could probably cut spending. Got to remember that when I grew up in this town, I rode with the Moab Police Department my junior and senior year because that was the career that I chose that I was going to follow after riding on a one-day ride-along program with Alan West. Back in the day, that if you look at Farmington Police Department now, they don't have a car per man program. Moab Police Department has a car per man program. You can cut the cost of that vehicle cost in half. There's a lot of areas in the city that I see where costs can be cut before we start asking the citizens to delve more out of their pocket.
Rather than getting the answers from the neutral candidates, we're going to do a follow-up question and ask all of you. Does anyone on the stage know the history of property tax in Moab? Does anyone care to explain what they do know?
I think I raised my little hand, so I'll raise my little voice. My understanding was that we used to have a property tax in Moab, and then it came back and went to a sales tax so that the visitors could pay in that part of the tax. I do know that we're second to, in my research, the way I see it, we're second only to Park Cities in the rate of our property tax. And I think that we need to start cutting spending to meet our budgets first before we start raising the taxes on the people that can't afford it. We're talking about affordable housing and everything for everybody. Well, that goes on top of that. I know a person that works on the police department right now that the county property tax went up, and their mortgage went up $400 a year and a half ago, and they're struggling to make it right now. And they both work. I just think that we need to get our house in order first and be fiscally responsible. Sort of like the state asks, why aren't your citizens paying? Well, what are we doing to reduce spending?
All right, I'm going to go to our incumbent, who likely knows this very well. Tawny.
Technically, we do still have a property tax. It's just set at 0. And Moab did have a property tax in the past. During the 80s, I do believe, when things busted, the city council reduced it to 0. They did not eliminate it, so we wouldn't be instating a new tax. It would be increasing a tax that's still there. There are numerous thoughts as to why that was reduced. I've heard several different theories. I think it was really just to give people that were on the verge of losing their homes a break. And I don't think it was supposed to be a decades-long moratorium on that tax.
Thank you, guys. Okay. Second question, lightning round. So we have seen businesses make the decision to annex into the city for more favorable business codes and density improvements. Do you support people annexing into the city? Those of you that agree, say yes. Yes. All 5. Okay, it's unanimous. Well, great. Give me a second. We're going to decide who. Okay. Colin, how would you begin to offset the cost of So there's an offset cost when they start annexing into the city, straining on the resources that the city already has. How would you help to offset that cost?
So very much related with the previous question on property tax, because we don't have a property tax in our city, and that we do rely on sales tax. When we're talking about annexation, when we're looking at residential areas and residential annexation, that's something that's going to cost our city more to tie them in with our existing infrastructure. One way we've gotten around that, and there's actually a couple of really amazing projects that are in the pipelines right now. One, I believe, by the university just broke ground, where it's a mixed use. It's a combination of commercial and high-density residential. And so it's meeting 2 needs of this community. One, it's extending our tax base, and 2, it's bringing in affordable housing and workforce housing. And so that's the thing. Annexation needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis. That's a case where it's very beneficial to our community on 2 fronts.
Caitlin, how do you mitigate the additional strain it brings on the city?
I think it already is putting a strain on our city. I think that we have a lot of areas within what we think of as the city that are actually county islands that our law enforcement is responding to, that our public works are already having to respond to. I think it creates a lot of confusion and is already putting a strain on residents and on city and county staff to try and figure that out. I think that one of the big reasons to support annexation is to simply clear a lot of that up. It doesn't make sense to have rural residential zoning off of River Sands Drive. It just doesn't. And so this is an opportunity for the city and the county to work together to better clear up the relationship between each of their, especially public works, but roads, law enforcement, emergency response, be able to make those relationships more cut and dry.
Brad, what are some other benefits that you see?
Caitlin kind of hit the one that I have been talking to some people about on the head of law enforcement. It takes a lot of time when they're just discussing, and then they're on the clock trying to figure out who is supposed to respond to this, that, or the other thing. And so I think having more clear city boundaries of what is actually in the city, and I do think having it annexation along the highway as more businesses come in, and if we can develop more economic diversification and more businesses in town, that'll help grow that tax base, which will also lessen that burden. But it's when I look at the map of Moab city limits, it's quite confusing of why someone is not in the city, but those people are, or a whole island right in the middle of our city limits. And I think that would help in policing and public works services as well.
Tawny, if this starts happening more and more, how do we control the flow of too many businesses at one time being requesting
too many
to annex?
businesses being annexed at the same time. Annexation is a process. It's not a fast process. It's very slow and very deliberate for very specific reasons. Most annexations require a public hearing. It requires anybody with property abutting the property that's being annexed to be notified. They have a chance several times in that process to protest that. I don't really think there is a great chance of too many annexations happening all at once that overwhelm staff because it is a laborious process.
All right, and Patrick, I know that you said that you also agree with this, but what concerns would you have for us allowing this more and more?
Well, I have just seen recently in city council meetings some property that needed to be annexed, and I think, like Tawny says, there was a public hearing and there was comments from the community and a lot of considerations that need to be made before an annexation is granted. And I think that, like she said, on a case-by-case basis, we could control that.
All right, moving on to the third question. Legislative goals between the city and the county are different. They have different lobbyists and they ask different things. Those legislative changes for both the city and the county impact the business community in Moab. Do you believe the county and the city should be more aligned with their legislative goals? Yes or no? Raise your hand if you do think they should be more aligned. All right, that was fast. Okay. We will go. We're going to start with Tawny, since she has been in office already. What would be your priorities for the community as a whole?
In regard to legislative?
Yes.
Okay. There was a point where we used to have joint city and county meetings, and for the most part, they worked out well. I think there needs to be communication between the people that are planning those meetings to be very clear about what we are meeting about and have a set agenda and a proposed outcome, or at least a proposed plan that we are going to agree on at the end of those meetings. Sometimes they were either not well attended or they veered off course, and I often felt like we didn't accomplish things. But when we were able to work together, we did some really good work.
I'm going to do this one a little different. Any of you can answer this and just by raising your hand. What steps are you going to take to align with the county? It's all you.
I'll take it. I would say I already have really great relationships with the county, in part because I worked at the county. And I'm still, even a couple weeks ago, I've been involved in the future land use planning steering committee that the county has been working on to update their future land use plan. And so I already have a really great relationship with them. And, that spans across the planning, economic development, administrative commission levels, planning commission levels. And so I'm really excited to continue to foster that relationship. I understand the differences and the similarities, and so therefore I know how to push them forward. I also have really great connections, particularly within the housing world, but I have connections with state legislators, and I have already advocated on behalf of Moab at the state level, at the Capitol, during the legislative session, and so I'm looking forward to finding ways for the city and county to collaborate together to have a stronger voice to advocate for our needs at the state level.
All right. The final question will go to one of the three of the five that haven't answered yet. What priorities would you first focus on at a legislative level for the city? Brad, you were first up with your hand.
I think the thing I would first focus on is finding a way to work with UDOT and revitalize our downtown and get a way to slow down the trucks through town, whether that is through lobbying UDOT to have a truck speed limit through town that lowers it by 5 miles per hour, or if we even work with our police officers to make Moab known as a spot that you do not speed through town. This is a safety issue for us, and if we can get more pull at that state level to figure out how we can make that downtown safer in that corridor with those trucks, I think that would be a huge win for us as a town.
I'm just going to shirt tail what you had to say. I think that's really good. We have existing laws in this town right now that will slow truck traffic down that is not being enforced. We have a lot of things that are not being enforced in this town. I think we need to more aggressively do that. Since I work at City Market, I stand right out there and I see the trucks come in from the south end of town. I can't tell you the number of times in a week where I'll smell the smell of burnt brakes, and then I'll look across and see smoke bellowing out of the back end of the tandems of a truck. I think that we need to work on all of those solutions. But as far as working with the legislature, I think that it, just like I used as an example earlier, the noise ordinance that was enacted to kind of kill down some of the noise from these side-by-sides that go by the park and stuff here, I think that we need to strengthen relationships to find solutions to problems other than just passing an ordinance that the state is going to come back in and pass something that just does away or nullifies it.
Colin?
I would like to work at the state level to look for an alternative to a property tax. I know that there's already been initiated a conversation about a real estate tax or a transfer tax. To me, as our property values are going through the roof, I think that's a more equitable way to generate a more dependable and predictable revenue stream for the city. So, thank you.
All right, this next question, all the candidates have brought up today. So currently in the county and city, there are 2 building departments, 2 law enforcement agencies, 2 code enforcement teams, and other duplicates. But for these departments, do you think these should be consolidated with the county? Those that agree?
What specific, I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Yep. Building departments, law enforcement agencies, and code enforcements. Those in.
This is a half agreement.
Okay.
It'll be clear.
It's not for every department, is what you're saying. Those who disagree? You're the happy as well? Okay. And so I don't really have any neutral. Okay. Kaylin, what do you feel like are the benefits for businesses if we do consolidate?
So I want to explain what I mean by consolidating. I think that both on the city and the county side, both individual staffs are so overwhelmed. What I would propose is not to cut those jobs, but I think that it is extremely confusing for business owners, for our developers, for our realtors, for residents who are trying to, it's confusing to me, and I'm very familiar with both of these land use codes. I work with them all the time. And so I think to have more continuity between those two, to have more consistency with law enforcement, I think it goes to the needs versus wants. That is going to streamline revenue, and I think it's just going to make it easier and more streamlined. It's going to make it easier to operate your business, to know who to talk to. I think it's going to open up doors to provide better support between the city and county amongst some staffs to be able to work together better and to be able to communicate better with the public.
Thank you. Earlier, Brad, you mentioned some confusion with departments between city and county and who has jurisdiction. Do you feel that some of this would be solved with that, and would you elaborate further?
The one I was thinking about is the city building department, and I think it's the fire in the county, as someone was trying to redo something in their restaurant, and they started demolition. They had their plans, and then after they've already initiated the process, then they come in and say, oh, actually, you need to put in this firewall, and you need to do this. And they're getting one answer from the fire people, and they're getting another answer from the city building people. And so I think it's incumbent upon those two government agencies to get together, and not incumbent upon the business owner or the resident that's trying to find the answer out. And they should coordinate and figure out how they're going to move forward with that person's project.
Thank you. Tani, what do you feel are the benefits for businesses for keeping these departments separate?
First of all, it's not going to reduce costs. You aren't going to have less citizens to protect. You're not going to have less roads to patrol. You're not going to have less roads and streets to maintain and keep free of snow. Like Caitlin said, all those positions right now are just at maximum capacity. The positions need to stay there. I think what we need to do is actually become better at consolidating the process and making sure that we are communicating the same information to people, even if the codes are a little bit different within the city limits and within the county.
Okay, Colin, I'd love to hear about your half vote, if you'll elaborate more.
I just feel like looking at duplication is always something that we should be considering, and I think there are opportunities for cost savings, and where those cost savings come are at the administrative or the director level. When you have a police chief and a sheriff, and I'm not necessarily saying that, but it's always worth looking at a possible move towards efficiency between the city and county governments, and also just a more cooperative effort. And the benefit to businesses is just a more stable, more predictable, again, more stable footing for businesses to then flourish. So, thank you.
Patrick, I'd love to hear more about what you feel like the benefits for keeping them separate are for businesses as well.
I think there's a check and balance here. I've been in several different communities across this country where they have combined police departments. Look at Monticello, for instance. I think that having a city police department, some of my counterparts up here have talked about building codes and stuff like that. I'm not real familiar with that. There might be benefit to mixing some and combining some and not others. But I think when you have checks and balances in law enforcement, let's say the mayor has an initiative for something in the town, I'm sure that you can have contracts with whoever's providing the law enforcement services. but you have different initiatives out in the county than you do in the city, and I think separating those two out makes more sense to me.
Thank you. Tani, we had one follow-up question to your response. You did mention that it doesn't save money, and while we agree that all those positions are very busy, if we were to shift this budgetary requirement to the county that already has a property tax, do you feel like that would take some of the pressure off of the city for the need for one?
No, because I really think that the county would have to come up with that money somewhere. And they're not going to lower their property tax to take on the burden of the city police department or public works or any of those things. I really don't think that it's as simple as people want it to be made out to be. I mean, in Salt Lake, they instituted unified police department a long time ago, and cities are just finding that it's not meeting their needs. So that's kind of what I base that opinion on, is what I've seen up north.
Thank you. Moving on to the final question of the lightning round. Separate from the Moab Area Travel Council, do you believe the city of Moab should engage in marketing efforts to increase visitation? Raise your hand if you do agree with that. Raise your hand if you do not agree with it. And neutral. Okay. Nobody agreed, did they? All right. Let's go to. Let's start with you, Colin.
Okay. I did not agree with that.
Yep, exactly. What are your reasons? Do you think tourism at the current levels are sufficient for business, and why?
So my reason for not agreeing with the Moab, because I think that the city's role in marketing is maintaining and even developing its part of what I call the product that we're selling, this Moab experience. And so the Moab experience is when people come to this wonderful place, their experience is in the backcountry, where they're enjoying all of our trails and parks and just this wonderful landscape. And then when they're downtown in Moab and their accommodations and they're walking in these wonderfully cared for streets and sidewalks and entering these stores, to me, that's the role of city, to make sure that that portion of the Moab experience, our product that we're selling to the rest of the world, is well maintained and cared for. And thank you. Yep. And to me, I mean, in this day and age, I think about just the power of reviews. To me, the best form of marketing is word of mouth. And so when people come here, have an amazing experience in our backcountry or downtown, that's a far more powerful marketing tool than a billboard in Portland, Oregon.
Patrick, how would you improve the current advertising strategies imposed by the county?
This is going to be one of those areas that didn't really do a whole lot of education on. So I'm going to have to defer. That's why my wasn't a yes vote or a no vote. It was an in the middle vote. I don't have an opinion on that. I will tell you that I do know that City Market this year is experiencing a 40% drop in total scans, yet our sales have never been any better. And so corporate thinks we're doing a great job, yet we have a great drop-off in the number of visitors to our city this year. I think the reason corporate America is seeing that we're doing a great job is inflation. So I don't know about how the city does their advertising. I do know that when you come from Grand Junction now, you got a bunch of stickers on our Welcome to Utah sign. That kind of bothers me a little bit, but I don't have an opinion on that. I would have to do a whole bunch of research to answer that question. I apologize.
We're going to just go straight down the line. Caitlin, in your opinion, do you believe the current marketing done by the county is sufficient?
I believe the county is doing a pretty good job of marketing Moab. I think that I would love to see, you know, and so, you know, I disagreed with this question because, you know, I believe that the city should be partnering with the county for sure. I believe, you know, I kind of agree with Colin that it's not the city's job is to serve its residents and to serve our local businesses. I would love for the city to increase and to improve its communication and marketing, especially within and for local residents. And I think, you know, related to the county, I think that the city should be a partner, and I would love to see a switch towards, or, you know, more about high quality tourism, you know, focusing on quality, making sure that we are pushing visitors to, you know, support our local businesses and our local services, go with our local guiding company rather than going to the parks, advertising the parks, sorry.
Brad, do you think additional marketing would be detrimental to our economy and our businesses?
No, I don't think it would be detrimental. I actually think we should be doing a little more targeting of the off seasons. I think the swings in revenue are very hard for businesses. I know when I was running Green Solutions and we would drop off in the winter time, and I may have to let go 1 or 2 people, and then you just don't know if you're going to get them back, and you don't know who's going to come to the door and apply the next year. And so if you can just add just a little bit of revenue in those times of the summer lull and during the winter, and maybe keep on those people and have a little more continuity of your employment, that is super helpful for them. And I think also we should keep pushing the responsible recreation, and so that way it protects all the resources that people are coming to see.
Tawny, you're going to get one that's already been asked, but do you think that tourism and the current levels are sufficient for the businesses, and why? Sorry, let me rephrase that because I think I said it a little funny here. Do you think tourism at their current levels are sufficient for businesses, and why?
Not from what I'm hearing. Not from what I'm hearing from individual business owners. They are all telling me that this year their visitation and their clients have dropped off, and they can't really figure out 100% why. Like Patrick says, sales tax is just going gangbusters, but yet there aren't as many people here. So, I mean, there are theories as to whether they're just buying more expensive things or if things just cost more than they have in the past. But I think we could do a little bit better targeting our tourism advertising. I'm not sure we have to go to London and Paris to do it. When I was in London, I saw Discover Moab on a red bus.
All right, thank you guys. We are now done with the lightning round. We're going to move in. We will move into a 1-minute conclusion that each candidate will have a chance to provide. And we will start with Caitlin this time.
Perfect. Well, I'll start by saying thank you so much for everyone coming tonight and for the Chamber for hosting this event. It's been really exciting to have this and to hear from all the candidates about how they want to make Moab a better place. For me, as I said, I'm running for Moab City Council to make this community a place to call home for every resident. The consequences of decisions that are being made today are very real for me and my future family, for the kids in our schools, and for the employees working in our businesses. Living in Moab is so challenging these days, and our residents deserve leaders who aren't politicians who already have theirs. They need real people who understand what it feels like to fight for your right to survive in this community, let alone to thrive here. I am young, but I wouldn't be running for this position if I didn't have the track record or the drive to make Moab livable for every resident, because my community and my future here relies on it. I'm a public servant who's deeply committed to supporting current and future generations of people in this town. I stand for honest and pragmatic leadership, and I believe in the future of Moab tomorrow.
Brad, you're next.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. And thank all the candidates for being up here. It's definitely not an easy thing to do. I feel lucky to have this opportunity, and if I'm so lucky to get elected, I would definitely bring the attitude of what can I learn from these people and everything, as opposed to the attitude of trying to show people what I know. And what brought me to Moab in the first place was working for Splore, which did rafting trips for people of all abilities. And what I've learned from working with those people is that everyone has a story and everyone has dignity. And I think every resident of Moab deserves to be heard, and that their government is responsive to them and can help them out.
Tawny.
You were looking at me, but nothing was coming out of your mouth. Thank you all for coming tonight, and thanks to the Chamber for hosting this event. No, it's not an easy thing to get up here and to be put on the spot, so to speak, and try and share cognizant views when there are just kind of thoughts rambling around in your head. I'm running again for City Council, like I said, because I love this community. I want to do what's best for the most people that I can. I have to remember the path that got me here. I'm not a public servant that got mine early in life or didn't have a hard road to follow. I was a single mom for a long time, working 3 jobs to make sure the rent was paid and that food was on the table and boys were taken care of. So I have to remember that my life wasn't always as charmed as it is today. And I do acknowledge that I lead a very charmed life. And again, I would be remiss if I did not thank my wonderful husband of almost 30 years for putting up with this for as long as he has. Love
Thank you. Colin.
A community that cares in a landscape that inspires. How do we show the world that we're a community that cares? We make sure that community is a part of every decision-making process we make. When we invest in a community that people can and want to live in, then everything else will flourish. People will continue to want to visit, and not only that, but they will want to come back. Businesses will flourish and diversify, and we'll have the town that we all know Moab can be. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Patrick.
Well, I guess I'm last. Dead last. In summation, I want to thank the Chamber for having us all here today. It's been a pleasure for me. I love Moab. I was raised in this town. I have seen it lose some of its luster, but if you look at what we went through in just the last couple of years with COVID and losing so many people, so many good people in this community that I knew that are no longer here because of COVID. We have a lot of challenges to face us now, and I believe that I've got the experience in small, medium, and large government and business to be able to meet those challenges and come up with the innovative solutions with your all help. All of you. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our debate tonight. We want to thank you guys so much for coming and for sticking with us. We want to thank the candidates. Of course, we know it's not easy, and we know that as we're preparing as well. And so thank you so much for coming and being patient with us and for participating and speaking to these business issues for our members and for our businesses at large. And my last plug is just if you want to learn more about the Chamber of Commerce and what we do and what we can do for you and your business, just you can contact me anytime. I'm Lacey Shumway. I'm the executive director. I have my email address is director@moabchamber.com. You can call our office as well, and you can also join online. All right, that's it. Good night.